Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder, chief academic officer here at Newsela. I would normally follow that introduction by saying that I use AI as a thinking partner in helping to develop each of these episodes. But in this episode, I'm not going to do that. I just returned from a couple of classroom visits in California, and I want to reflect openly on some of the things that I saw and learned there. And I want to share some of the questions that I've heard from students and some of the answers that I want to give to those questions. I'm showing you here the little pile of Post-its that we collected from students at the end of our visit in one of the 8th grade classes that we saw. And I thought it was charming as always that students were so thankful that we were taking time to visit with them, and we were just as thankful that they were taking time, and their teachers were gracious enough to have us visit. They asked a number of questions, and I'd want to give you a little bit of context for the questions and where they were coming from. The district has been using a tool of ours called Newsela Writing, and Newsela Writing simply is a web application that provides AI feedback to students directly based on the parameters chosen by the teacher, and those parameters are things like a prompt. For example, I'm showing you a demo, not the actual student work, but a prompt created by the teacher, a rubric chosen by the teacher to form the basis for the AI-generated feedback. And of course, then students will sometimes read our materials, and then they will write based on what they have read, and then they can submit and get feedback. And so I say sometimes because they don't always have to use Newsela content, but very often they do, and in this case they did. And when students ask for feedback, they open this tab and they can submit their work, and when they receive the feedback, it will show them expected types of sentences based on the assignment type that the teacher has chosen, and it'll highlight the sentences that it identifies fitting those criteria, or students can learn more about each of those sentences. And then briefly, students can also ask for feedback by ways of glows and grows, and the rubric items will appear here, and each one of them will have a set of glows and grows beneath it, and students can revise their work and they can resubmit at any point. So that's the product that the students have been using. And so they had a series of questions, and I want to get into those because I think they're very interesting, not just about the Newsela Writing product that they're using, but also a window into these 8th graders in California and how they're being exposed to AI, what their thoughts are on AI, and some of their questions about AI. Let's get into the first set of questions. These questions ask, is the checking thing, and they mean Newsela Writing, an AI? How do you know the information is not fake? What system do you use to check for details, claim, etc.? Example, do you use AI? Do you use a prompt? And the third, what type of AI is used for Newsela, and why use AI, as well as specifically this AI? And I thought these questions are really insightful and really interesting. I wanted to take a minute to digest the answers to these questions, but also what the questions are telling us about students' awareness and experience with AI at this moment. So the checking thing, is it an AI? Yes, it's an AI. How do we know the information is not fake? And I think what the question is asking here is, how does you, the product, know that what is being submitted hasn't been plagiarized? So there's a number of questions that are implied by this. One is that students are aware that some of the work that is submitted to these products is quote unquote fake. They're aware that there may be some question as to whether this information is fake, and they're not sure. What they're wondering is, how would we know, how would the product know if it's fake? And the answer is very simply, AI is not good at detecting AI. This is something we talked about on this podcast before, but there's a pretty substantial body of research and writing about the proclivity of the AI to have false positives, that is, to identify writing as AI generated when it is not, in fact, AI generated. And in particular, this can happen with non-standard English writers who are learning English and don't speak or write in standard ways. And so we don't employ those methods here. What we try to do is to make the process transparent. We have a document history, and we try to show the writing process to the teacher so that they can be informed as to what the process was that students went through to generate the writing that they submit. but Newsela writing itself has no built-in mechanism to find out whether the information is quote-unquote fake. The next question, what system do you use to check for details, claim, etc.? Do you use AI? Do you use a prompt? I think this is asking a similar question around how do we go about analyzing the writing? Do we use AI? The answer is yes. Do we use a prompt? I think it's interesting here just to see the use of the word prompt. Students are thinking about the AI being prompted. It shows there's awareness of how this technology is taking root in their day-to-day teaching and learning experiences, their learning experiences as students. I would say in this particular case, and I think this is the case for a number of districts across California, there is not an AI policy district-wide. The state of California is in the process of developing a district policy, as I was told by administrators in the district. And so they are waiting to see how this will inform the district's policy. And they want to make sure that they're going to be in alignment with advice and guidance from the state. And Newsela Writing is one of the few examples of AI-powered products and interfaces that students are interacting with in school. So this idea of using a prompt and using AI is something that they're probing, but they're not deeply familiar with, is what I'm understanding. And then finally, what type of AI is used for Newsela? Why use AI, as well as specifically this AI? I mean, these are great questions, not just from an 8th grader, from anyone. What type of AI is used for Newsela? Well, we have different models that we employ for different purposes. We will never train on our users' data. We have explicit agreements with any of the providers of the models that we use. We use AI for a number of reasons, one of which is that it can automate and scale practices that would otherwise be very time-consuming for us, but we would always have human oversight. And we take that same kind of approach in our use of AI to the way that we build Newsela Writing so that teachers have oversight of the use of the AI and the use of the feedback that's being given to students. So there's a similar sense of enablement and scale that we wouldn't be able to achieve internally at Newsela that's similar to what we're hoping to achieve on behalf of teachers and in partnership with teachers with their students. For the last question I want to take up today, the question reads, for the writing prompts page, many kids use AI because of their laziness. I was wondering if there is a tool that the website uses to see who uses AI so that they could get graded fairly compared to students that actually work. We've answered this question previously, but what I want to take the lens here on this question is this, I think, the sympathy that I have for the student who is talking about quote unquote many kids. And I don't think the student counts themselves amongst that group. And so I just want to take a moment and pause and honor the perspective of a student who is trying to figure out how to be treated fairly when he sees, she sees, they see their peers and other students. They are generally aware that there is cheating going on, and they're looking for some recourse, some reassurance that the authorities, the software, their teachers, are going to have a way to distinguish the actual work, quote unquote, here from the fake work, the use of AI to generate. And I think this is a point of view that we don't talk about too much, but it's the student, and perhaps they're increasingly the minority in the population of students and the peers as they look around, who are not using AI to get through an assignment, and they're spending more of their own brain power generating their own answers. And it could be that they are experiencing some of the downsides of this because their own writing may look deficient compared to the writing that is generated by AI and being used by their peers. And I think there is a warning here to all of us who are working in this space that this is compromising a basic sense of fairness and trust in the system, that it will equitably regard the hard work and the effort and not only the product. And I think this is one of the very sort of insidious and misleading aspects of AI's application in education, is that the purpose is not the product. And when the product is the dimension by which students are being judged, and that product can, on a superficial level, look better when generated by AI than when generated authentically by a student who is working to the best of their ability, then we have a dynamic in which the students' trust in the system is fundamentally undermined, and they don't feel that they can get a fair hearing. And they may find that the best next course of action is to give in and go with the majority, even if on some level, as they can say here, that would mean that they're giving in to laziness and that they are not doing the actual work. And I think this is a timely and important question and plea from a student who is trying to do the actual work, and that we have to keep in mind that those students continue to try to do the actual work in the midst of an environment that is becoming even more confused, I think, by the emergence and the steady rise in prevalence of AI. So I won't name the district, I won't name the students, but I hope they will at one point listen to this, because I really honor their questions, and I think they've really done us a service here by asking them. And I hope you are having conversations in your classrooms with students about similar issues to these, and I would love to know what those look and sound like. In particular, what are the questions? What are the questions students are asking? Perhaps your answers as well. Really interested in those questions. That's it for today. Thanks as always for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.